Welcome to the Leader Post Rider Rumblings podcast, episode number 159 with Darrell Davis and Taylor Shire here, recapping the CFL season that was. We're going to talk lots about the Grey Cup that was just played on the weekend between the Argonauts and the Blue Bombers. Plus, we'll look ahead to the Saskatchewan Roughriders offseason. Since this is the Rider Rumblings podcast, we should do that. But first, Darrell, I think everybody has come here for your review of the Jonas Brothers halftime performance.
They're awesome, man. They're just what a show. There's some good ones. Green Day was outstanding last year in Hamilton. I really enjoyed them. Some of them have been terrific. Some of the Grey Cup halftime shows, I've been to 36 or 37. I'm losing track of how many Grey Cups I've seen. There have been some bad ones along the way too, but this was a tremendous one. The light show they put on. I keep saying the light show and the explosiveness was at halftime was way better than the halftime. The first half shown by the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and the Toronto Argonauts. So you see I'm wearing my Grey Cup swag. Obviously, we're in Vancouver. They gave us an umbrella, too. We've needed that because it's been rainy, but a really good Grey Cup, a good halftime show. It turned out to be a weird and entertaining Grey Cup. And everything that should have happened did happen, I guess, except the weirdest team won. I don't know how the Argonauts did it. A streaker on the field in the fourth quarter. It's just like everything wrapped into one for Randy Ambrosie, the commissioner's final Grey Cup. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah, it was a pretty wild game. When you look at the score, the Argos won 41-24 for their second Grey Cup in 3 years. The Bombers have now lost 3 straight games, but really heading into the week, I think most, if not all, outside of the Blue Bombers, there was a few that picked the Argos, but most picked the Bombers to win. They were 9.5-point favorites. Obviously, they lost Chad Kelly the week prior to the Argos did to a leg injury. Nick Arbuckle's coming in for his first start in the Grey Cup, and even from the start, it looked like, okay, Winnipeg was sort of in control. It was a 10-9 game at halftime. Nobody really was doing much of anything. The Argos defense was playing well, and then it was just kind of a bizarre, wild second half.
Yeah, a couple of weird calls, right? There weird things happen. Lucky Whitehead fumbling that punt return for the Bombers, and that interference play on a loose ball foul that the Bombers could have had the ball back. Instead, they gave it to Toronto by just a call that some people seem to think was okay, but a lot of people I didn't think was that serious. But I guess that's the way the infraction reads, and it's a strange rule that maybe should be changed. But just turned the game around in a couple of different ways. And don't forget, as I like to say, the God Center got involved by they just can't stay out of the fray. They had to disallow an Argonauts penalty, and that's kind of when things started turning back for the Argonauts, who didn't have Chad Kelly, their quarterback, who I've laced pretty heavily throughout the whole season. And the only reason I keep doing that, Taylor, is because I keep wanting the Argonauts and Chad Kelly to show that they're doing something about the reaction, right? That he was suspended 9 games for harassing a female coach who was terminated, settled her lawsuits out of court. And all you hear from Chad Kelly is that he's going to revenge himself against these people who have done him wrong. You hear Dorian Dinwiddie talk about the struggles that he went through, that Chad Kelly, Dinwiddie's the head coach, his quarterback went through. He's our franchise player. Pinball Clemens, when I asked him about what are they doing to make a safe environment for employees, and does this hurt women's hiring potential across the league, the Argos have done nothing about it. And that's why I'm harping on it quite a bit. I know that maybe some people are mad about that, but something should be done. And there's no commissioner in place. Well, Randy Ambrosie will be there for a while, but I wonder where this is going to lead. And when you get right back to it, so that was just a little bit of an aside. The big thing is Chad Kelly's a great football player. And not having him, we thought, as you said, that they weren't going to win with Nick Arbuckle at quarterback. Nick Arbuckle had not proven himself at 5-6 different stops throughout the league. Looking at his travel map is really pretty amazing. And then he steps in and got better as the game went along. You're right, started a little sluggishly, but kind of got going. And they were comfortable with him. He threw like to 7 or 8 different receivers. Nobody caught more than 4 passes. Nobody gained more than 45 yards. They didn't use Kadeem Carey, the running back, that much. But the defense, four picks of Zach Collaros, who everybody is calling Grey Cup Zach because he's really struggled his last 3 starts for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in the last 3 Grey Cups.
Yeah, hasn't thrown a touchdown pass. And I think back to the Kelly situation, it went from what would have been a feel weird story if Kelly would have won the Grey Cup, and it just would have been this whole overshadowed by all that's happened, and rightfully so, to more of a feel good story, I'll say, with Nick Arbuckle sort of coming on and completing this Cinderella, like not even a season, but an overall journey for him to be put in that moment. Everyone was doubting him, and all of a sudden he's named the MVP of the Grey Cup.
He almost retired in the
Yeah,
offseason,
like
right?
almost
Because
took
he
a
was
coaching
thinking about
job. All the
and
interviews that he talked about
yeah.
was just remarkable.
And he brought his family. He's this good, God-fearing man. Brought his family into the press conference, which I hate, by the way. That I really dislike the fact when people bring their families into the press conference. There's lots of time to run around, but come into the press conference and focus. And sure enough, of course, the little girls. It's a beautiful little picture, but they're playing around and at the podium, and it takes a lot longer to conduct the interview. Listen, come in, do the interview, get out, and then you can go be with your family even longer. Nick Sirianni did that with the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFL this year, and during tough questioning, he had gotten into a blast with the fans. Don't bring your children to press conferences. I respect Nick Arbuckle, what he did and what he wants to do, but come on, this is our little work time. Come in, get your work done, go celebrate all you want. Okay, that's how it works. So I was a little disappointed in that the CFL allowed it, but that's how it goes sometimes. And I know they want to celebrate and all those things, but what a contrast, as you mentioned, between Nick Arbuckle and Chad Kelly, and just the personas, the way they are, the way they're perceived. How Chad Kelly just kind of stepped in and became the player of the year in the league, and Nick Arbuckle's bounced around and did the job. So credit to Ryan Dinwiddie, even though he supports Chad Kelly so strongly, he did an amazing job coaching that offense and putting it in a position. That couple of those touchdown passes that they weird play action, different misdirection plays that Winnipeg was not ready for at all. And Winnipeg's got a pretty good defense, but just couldn't adapt to that. So kudos to the Argonauts. They absolutely deserved the victory. And to do it with a backup journeyman quarterback, really impressive.
Yeah, and I feel like Toronto's defense sort of did what Winnipeg's defense did to Saskatchewan the week prior in the West Final, just kind of shut everything down. Everything that the Riders were trying to do, Winnipeg seemed to have an answer for, and in the second half especially, in the first half too, but the Argos just seemed to have an answer for everything Winnipeg was trying to do. Brady Oliveira wasn't the game-breaking player that we've seen him be before. They weren't allowed to, I think they call it bully ball, they weren't allowed to do that, right? He only got I don't know how many times he touched the ball based on the box score. It wasn't an outstanding amount in the game, but I think there should have been more if Winnipeg is going to win the game. He should be getting the ball on every other play.
Yeah, the Bombers got asked about that quite a bit after, and even the Argonauts. Did you expect them to run the football more with Brady Oliveira, who I think ended up like with 9 carries for 81 yards. He was averaging 9 yards per carry. Zach Collaros gets hurt, the starting quarterback. They put it in their backup Wilson, and rather than give the ball to Brady Oliveira, which everyone's expecting, and there were holes open, we could see them, they're throwing into the end zone. Just some bad coaching decisions by the Blue Bombers. You're right. Brady Oliveira could have done more. They should have let him do more. And especially, I know you're thinking, okay, Toronto's keying on him. Well, even if they're keying on him, make them stop him. He's the outstanding player in the league this year. So give Brady Oliveira the ball, and they got away from that. There was many opportunities for Winnipeg to get back in that game after they blew a halftime lead in the Grey Cup, but they never seemed to call the right thing, the right play, the right idea during the second half. Maybe they were out listening to the Jonas Brothers and forgot all about strategy.
Yeah, and one of the biggest turning points of the game, we've talked about a few, but it was the Collaros injury to his finger. He goes in, gets stitched up, while he's getting stitched up, Terry Wilson absolutely misses every receiver that he was trying to throw to. He almost threw a pick in the end zone. I was thinking Jake Dolegala might come in because he's got a better arm. So I was kind of surprised that they didn't give it to Dolegala in that situation. But Collaros comes back, and I think, like you said, it's sort of overcoaching, where he comes back and his first throw back with this thing on his finger and a glove is a deep pass. And so maybe Winnipeg's thinking, oh, Toronto is expecting us to run the ball now, so we're going to try to surprise them and throw it deep. And I think that's just overcoaching. You have the MOP running back, hand him the ball off. You have a quarterback with a glove who doesn't play with the glove and stitches on his finger, and you're going to throw deep. That's literally the opposite of what should have happened. And that, I think that cost the Bombers, just that sort of strategy alone.
Yeah, really bad strategies. It looked for a while like Toronto had made the wrong strategy choices, right? They were third and goal at the 1 yard line and kicked the field goal. Tried to get a time count violation against Winnipeg, didn't work, so they ended up kicking the field goal. And you think, geez, you better score touchdowns against Winnipeg. And it ended up not backfiring because Well, Zach Collaros started throwing interceptions. I kept saying he threw to everybody except the woman who was the female streaker in the fourth quarter. She wasn't wearing a uniform, might have been why. But so it was a bad performance by Zach Collaros, who took responsibility. He knows the quarterbacks get blamed for that, but bad strategy by Mike O'Shea, the head coach, and Buck Pierce is usually reliable offensive coordinator.
Yeah, and it sort of reminded me of the Mitchell Bowl here, played at Mosaic Stadium over the weekend between the Regina Rams and Laval, when Regina got so close to the end zone a few times, but sort of came away with field goals. And they were, I think, 17-point underdogs in the Mitchell Bowl, and they ultimately lost just by 3 points. They were in it right until the end, but it was sort of that they were sort of kicking themselves at the end for not scoring early. So that didn't end up costing the Argos, not going for it on 3rd and 1 and whatnot early, but it very well could have, especially when you're that big of an underdog against a team like Winnipeg. You need to be able to turn those 3 points into touchdowns.
Yeah. Strange call by Regina. I was watching the end of that one too. The University of Regina, the 3rd and 1 from the gun. It sounds like a song, right? The 3rd and 1 from the gun, and it never works. It seems like so. That they gave the ball to Erickson and Laval came through and stopped them for a loss. Line your quarterback right behind center, and or line a running back right behind center and let them plow the ball. That's what the Riders did with AJ Ouellette, and it ended up scoring a touchdown for them. Decreases the amount of handoffs, decreases the likelihood of failure. But who are we to second guess the Rams? They got there and it was pretty impressive. Yep. You're right. Laval's a powerhouse of the squad, and will be a tough team going forward all the time. But good for the Rams too, with the Vanier Cup coming to Regina next year. They certainly proved that they could be a contender.
Yeah, it was a kind of a crazy game. Regina's defense played so strong and held Laval in check. They let basically one explosion play. Laval scored a touchdown on a 75-yard pass. Other than that, Regina stopped them all night, and the Rams took the lead with Marshall Erickson running it in from, I believe, 36 yards with 3 minutes left. And then all Regina needed was one stop on that last drive by Laval, and they couldn't get it. Laval obviously showed why they are a powerhouse and why they were the favorites. They were able to march down, and all you need is one stop. You need not even a turnover, but just a big stop on a 3rd down play or a 2nd down and a 3rd down play. Like, they came so close, and then coming back, it was sort of put their offense in a tough spot. Their offense did not necessarily struggle, but they weren't moving the field at will. So to put them in a spot to try to run the field and get themselves into a field goal position
as
was
you
tough.
said,
but
you need a big play there or a stop, and the stop decided the game. I know it boils down to way more than that, but in a crucial moment, the stop by Laval really made sure Regina couldn't win it. And sometimes coaches and players love to say it's 2 or 3 or 4 plays, but sometimes you can boil it down to one, can't you?
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, let's touch on the Saskatchewan Roughriders season. I know we talked about it a little bit last week on the podcast in terms of, heading into the off season, what some of the needs are, what the biggest worries are for this franchise heading into 2025. But I think they're in good shape with basically their coaching staff cementing themselves in their first year and basically setting the foundation. The players aside, I think just having the coaching staff, having obviously Jeremy O'Day coming back, having all of that heading into this offseason, I think is going to allow them to stack on top of what they did this last season versus last offseason, which was a complete, right? We were talking about who's going to be the next head coach and what's this team going to look like and how they're going to turn it around. But they obviously had a remarkable turnaround season this year, and now I think they're going to be even better next year, especially with some players who are going to be available in free agency.
Yeah, they don't need many players, right? They do have their nucleus in place when you think of Ferland and Milligan, and a lot of those players are the key guys, and to have those guys tied up is really important. You do make a decision, as Jeremy O'Day, the general manager, does, that these are the players I want to keep. They're the players we're going to build around. So sign them to the longer term contracts and then re-up them as it goes along, and as they're still performing at a high level, which those guys were. The question always comes down, well, let's get to the quarterback later. We'll talk, as you said, about the coaches. They all got better. And seeing Corey Mace even here in Vancouver, when we recorded this, I'm still in Vancouver, and he was here for the Coach of the Year. I'm still surprised that he didn't win against Jason Moss, the Montreal Alouettes. But voting, it's a democracy. That's how it goes. There's another election or two that I've been surprised at the last few weeks, so what the heck. So Jason Moss won it, Corey Mace didn't, but just the fact that he was nominated is people are aware of how good he was as a head coach. But he talked about it, and we've asked him about it. He's learned from that. I get the strong feeling, and I don't know if it's going to come true, but he's thinking about letting Joshua Bell, his defensive backs coach, or somebody else call the defensive plays, because even Corey Mace realized he made a couple of mistakes. He got better as it went along, but if his mind is being a head coach, it's still tough because he's still learned to be a defensive coordinator. So that's first and foremost, and sometimes you might forget the other job. As a head coach, you don't have that many in-game decisions, but they're all vital. So you have to be ready for that. And if you're distracted a little bit by being the defensive coordinator, he did a good job. The defense was very good and very conservative, but he even talked about maybe he was too conservative in play calling, and maybe letting somebody else do that, they'll get a little bit more rambunctious with their play calling, some blitzes and man-to-man defenses, just to throw those in once in a while. Obviously, his key defense is his zone. Mark Mueller, the offensive coordinator, well, I know some people were critical. I didn't like the A.J. Ouellette over and over and over again on first down, especially against Winnipeg in the West Final. But the game before that against the BC Lions, called a very good game. So they go through their highs and lows, which is going to happen with the new coaching staff. I think the coaching staff is pretty good and getting better. So that's not a bad spot to be right now. The players, all of them, you can change the entire roster over the season. But the big one, what do you think Trevor Harris is going to do? Where's he going to sit next year?
Yeah, it's interesting. I do just want to touch on your Corey Mace point, because especially at the end of the season, but every time we talk to him, even I asked him in Garbage Bag Day, what do you sort of need to improve on, and what do you sort of need to clean up next year? Obviously, he's built a good culture, but he did sort of second guess his defensive play calling and his game flow decisions. And like you said, I think that leads into making a decision to say, how can I get better? How can the team get better at not having to second guess either of those decisions? And I think what you said of just handing the reins over to somebody else would then sort it out, right? Where somebody can just focus on one and somebody could focus on the other. Yeah.
He can still design the defense, Taylor, right? And just
not play the calls, right?
Exactly. And let somebody else, it sounds like he and Joshua Bell, the secondary coach, think a lot alike. So, if they're only going to make a couple of different calls, just turn it over to Josh Bell, and Mace can still handle the defensive strategies and all those things between games. But in the game, he's got to be there. And I think Corey Mace just found out just how much extra there is being a head coach. And he's a smart man. So he understands that, and he's very self-effacing. He's very analytical about how he's doing, how everybody's doing on the team. So I think he realized it. Maybe we just look at it differently from outside, but it wouldn't be a bad move, to be honest.
Okay, I sidestepped your Trevor Harris question, so I'll get back to it.
Okay.
This could go one of two ways. I think that this team should bring back Harris, should sign him to a contract this month, next month, and say, you're back on a one-year deal. We're going to run it back a full off season with Mark Mueller and Harris again after what they learned this last year. Building that, he had a remarkable second half of the season after his injury. So building off of that, heading into next year, I think would give this team the best chance to win next year. But like we said earlier in the season, or like I said, I don't know if Harris can give this team the best chance to win for the next 5 years. So what does that look like? Do you want to run it back and bring back Harris and give the confidence to him before free agency opens, so he doesn't have to go into free agency not knowing what this team's going to do? And then Jeremy O'Day saying, I'm going to let other people battle for Vernon Adams Jr., Davis Alexander, Trey Ford, whoever else is out there. Or do you sort of wait until free agency and tell Trevor, hey, we're going to try out a few other guys, but you're our backup plan if we don't land Vernon Adams and whoever else. So what does that do for the confidence of Harris? Obviously, he's a humble guy, understands the situation, but that's how I see it playing out. There's going to be a decision made here if the Riders elect to try to go in free agency. Trevor could be the quarterback based on those two situations still, but do you just give him that 1 year extension now and say you're our guy for next year, or do you try to go for somebody else and maybe fall back on him?
Yeah, exactly right. That's what Danny Baird used to say. Exactly right. When he was the head coach. You're exactly right there, Taylor, because what do? You commit and think you're close enough to win the Grey Cup. Remember, as good as Trevor Harris is, he's never won a Grey Cup as a starter, right? He's gotten them there. He's lost once as a starter, and he's won as a backup, right, to Henry Burris with Ottawa. So He seems to be experienced enough. It's not as if he can't carry the ball all the way through, but if you commit to him, it's short term because he'll be 39 next year, right? I know he says he wants to play into his 40s, and he does keep himself in good shape, but he's gone through 2 knee injuries in 2 years. He's missed 19 missed 19 games over the 6 this year and 13 last year. Yeah, so that's a lot of games to miss out of 36. Do you take that chance? You have to renegotiate probably with him, and will he take a pay cut? I don't know if there's any other place for him to land as a starter, unless even if those teams were to lose Davis Alexander in Montreal, Trey Ford in Edmonton, Vernon Adams Jr. in BC, they have starters in place. So it's not as if Trevor Harris is going to go somewhere and replace those guys. I think a quarterback carousel might be coming in the offseason, and Trevor Harris might be on it because there is some uncertainty. I don't think all the options you talked about are certainly in Jeremy O'Day's mind and in Corey Mace's mind, because there are so many ways it could go, but you have to commit somehow or the other, or make the decision, this is what we're going to do. And it's either to Trevor Harris's benefit or to his detriment. And either way, it's a tough decision.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I don't think Trevor is at the point where we often talk about, phasing out a quarterback and letting him be a veteran backup and let a young guy learn. He's not. I don't think he's there, and I don't think he should be.
He wouldn't accept that, would he?
And that's what I mean. I don't think he would either accept. I don't think he should accept that, because he's still a starting quarterback. So that'll be obviously the biggest offseason decision for this club. There's lots of other free agents, but even in speaking with many of them at Garbage Bag Day, all of them want to be back based on what they sort of went through this year, the sort of culture turnaround and whatnot. And I think there's going to be a lot of players who want to come back and for the right price because of that.
There you go. That's the big part. Yeah. And show me you want me. And how do you show them? By the right contract offer. So the Riders end up making the decision. If they want those guys back and they offer them a contract with a raise, and they'll come back. They put a good team together. But what do you do with Ouellette, with Hardrick? So 2 guys who they paid a lot of money to, who weren't, Hardrick got hurt, Ouellette got hurt. Are they worth that amount of money? Do you bring them in for 1 year? They sign them for more, but you can still release them, obviously. Are they worth that investment? Yeah, Jameer Thurman was. Yes, was Malik Carney a good investment? They've got to reassess their free agency a little bit. They got a few good players in free agency, but some of them didn't pan out. So they have to decide what they're doing with those guys too. So
yeah,
it's a tough one. It's a really tough decision. It's like a big puzzle, putting it all together with the salary cap too, and it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, the salary cap breakdown, I would love to see it, and I wish the CFL did make it public. But you mentioned those 2 guys, Ouellette and Hardrick, that they signed last year. Would you ever have to lowball then a guy like Jameer Thurman because of those contracts, right? And then Thurman obviously shouldn't accept a lowball contract. He should go where he's valued, and I think that he should get a raise based on what he did last year. So do those pieces fit into the Peter Godber's another guy as well. I know he was injured, but he's going to be a big key piece of that offensive line for next year, and he deserves probably the same salary. So you obviously need a new cornerback to replace Amari Henderson, or do you stick with Deontay Williams? There's a lot of sort of big pieces that need to be put into place, so it'll be an interesting offseason for this team heading into 2025 for sure.
Aren't they always?
Yeah, aren't they? Well, maybe not last year. Maybe not last year with all the coaching changes. But
aren't we glad we don't have to make those decisions? We just scrutinize them.
We'll just analyze it and judge it all. Anyway, I guess that'll do it for episode 159, and maybe we'll take a bit of a break over the next few weeks and recharge and look forward to, of course, free agency getting underway in February for the CFL, and maybe a slow couple of weeks here now as we're now officially into the offseason.
Fun season.
Yes, it was a pleasure for sure, and we look forward to catching up with you again at some point this offseason. Darrell?
Thanks, Taylor. Take care.